The first one is, what does the future of work look like in your industry?
Hmm. Well, it's kind of harder now with the pandemic, but what does the future look like for a designer? For service designers and for, say, user experience designers, I think the pandemic has created a huge opportunity for designers generally, but what's really, really important at the moment is the ability to facilitate and lead conversations for organizations, bring people together. It's so much harder now when people are, not co-located. So being able to do that, but services are being put under huge strain. And we've seen with the pandemic globally, it's putting huge strain on the health services, and the health services weren't able to scale. But also the communication from organizations was really, really bad. So a good example was in Victoria and Melbourne, where the government put out some guidelines on how to respond and how to maintain health during the early stages of the pandemic. But they only created it in a number of languages. They didn't create it in all the languages, whereas that state has got a huge amount of different languages, a hugely diverse society. And as a result, we saw a huge spike, and purely because the organization and the government didn't know how to properly communicate. So I think communication is a really, really big thing, and being able to bring people together, to work together, to collaborate, to recreate and rebuild things so they're a lot better and more human-centered in many ways. That's going to be where a lot of the work is for the next maybe decade, I'd say, is helping organizations reshape and reposition themselves. Hopefully the focus is on not creating new things. It's actually focusing back on and improving what's an internal, because as you can see, a lot of these problems are internal. They're not about the website. It's about how their organization is structured and how they can respond. So hopefully we'll see more dissolving of power and dissolving of hierarchy, and more flat structures and empowerment of people so they can do their jobs. They're the things that I hope for. And they're the things that I hope my two kids grow up to experience, less around hierarchy and fear, which seem to be basic kind of ingredients in many organizations and institutions.
You think about the education that your kids are receiving in those educational institutions they're going to go through in their lifetimes.
Yeah.
What would you want the educators who have contact with them to be able to do to help them prepare for the imagined future that you described earlier? If the future of work is going to be about collaboration, and it's going to be about flat structures, and it's going to be about human-centered, how can education help?
So looking at Ireland is a good example. So the educational system, I went through a Catholic Christian Brothers system, boys only in young school and big school. I don't know what you call it in Spain, but and then all of a sudden you were 18 and I was like in university with girls, and I was like, wow, this is a whole new world for me. So there was segregation. So it's really important for us that our children go to co-ed, so they're able to respect and communicate with people of both genders. And how can they what do I want to see for them in the future? Again, communication. I want them to be effective communicators. I want them to be able to respond to certain things, and I want them to embrace everyone. So Ireland is a really it's not as diverse as I'd like it to be, is probably the nice way, the political way of saying it. So explaining to them about all elements of society, and explain to them that not everyone has a home. So I regularly walk down streets where people tell me not to walk down streets because there's homeless people there, but we shouldn't be afraid of homeless people. They're just people who need help. So I explore that, and I don't see education really exploring enough of what's currently going on in society. So it's really providing that platform and that canvas to really identify areas where there's huge opportunities for improvement in society, as opposed to just thinking of the future as being rosy. It's not really looking at the now and what we could potentially do right now. So I would love my children to get exposed to those kind of forward thinking, open mind, inclusive sort of mindsets is what I'm trying to say. And that to me wraps up human-centered design in a nutshell. It's about doing no harm, and it's not, you know, it's not something you can learn from a book. It's something that you have to see with your own eyes and feel with your own hands, and it's something that we try to do. And lastly, it's the exploration of the earth. And I've started in the last number of years to compost and grow vegetables and show the power of the soil to my children. And I met the wonderful author John Thacker, who lives in France, a number of years ago, actually in Barcelona, Andrew. And he sort of opened my eyes to how poor educational systems are around educating around that. So those structures aren't in place in education to go and explore and develop your own compost, grow your own vegetables. It's very rarely taught in schools, where it should be. It should be encouraged to be self-sufficient. It should encourage you how to compost. It should encourage you how to understand and the power of the soil.
Question for us, for our purposes for this video, is what do you think you would do differently if you were starting your own career exploration all over again?
The obvious answer is I wouldn't do anything too differently, because it's who I am. It's made me who I am today. So UX service design wasn't something that was an opportunity for me when I left university in 2002. It wasn't there. But what would I like to have done more of? I guess more of the application of design and real world problems, less around, you know, kind of commercialism and creating products for sale and stuff, like actually using design to improve systems and processes. That's where I kind of get my highs, believe it or not. And it was never really an opportunity to play, like improving, you know, the standard of happiness in a city, or improving how people, you know, you sort of get rid of their waste and all these different things. They're all huge problems, but it was never really brought to us in university as a challenge. The only one that really exposed people to that was the RSA Student Design Award. They've got some really good design challenges and award systems there. And that was kind of the only exposure I had to it, but I would have loved to have had more hands-on exposure to it, because for the first 25, 20 or 30 years, I was probably societally blind to a lot of the problems. A white privileged male, you know what I mean, like three things there. So I didn't really see a lot of the problems, and it would have been good for the education system to point those out to me, help me in those early stages, help me develop as a person as well. And it just wasn't there. It was just it was a real opportunity that was lacked. So hopefully, you know, organizations, institutions can look at that and really improve how they do those things. I think they have. Like I've heard great things about the universities in Ireland now, so kudos to them.